welcome to Kicker Radio. I'm Alex Kennedy.
And I'm Emily Lyver. Welcome to all our listeners online and everyone watching on the Rogers Community Television.
On the show today, getting back to basics, local musician Mick Davis tells us how everything old is new again on his band's new album.
A front row seat to history. We'll meet a Newfoundland woman who's in Korea for the Winter Games.
And fungus with healing powers. We'll go in search for some of the most magical of mushrooms. But first, here's Jason Shepard with the news.
Thanks, Alex. Our top story today. St. John's parking meters are going high-tech, as Amy Cleary tells us. The price tag is hefty, and not everyone is sold on the idea.
St. John's has decided to go high-tech with its new parking meters. It's going to take 5 years and $600,000 in taxpayers' money. And the person who presented this idea to the council is Councillor Debbie Hanlon.
It's a fantastic system. They actually have it in Montreal or Toronto. As luck would have it, I was in Toronto last week with my son, and he was showing me how simple it was. It's quite impressive.
She gave an excellent explanation about where the money is coming from.
The money will come out of the operating budget for capital work.
I wandered downtown and asked folks about the new parking meters.
I do agree with the parking meters being changed over to a different method of payment because the rate of parking meters being robbed these days has gone up. So I do think it is a better idea that it is just a payment of credit cards or debit rather than cash.
Well, I don't agree with it because a lot of people don't have credit cards.
Bank cards.
Yeah, and bank cards. But students, if it's for students, they definitely need the cash flow in order to do it. But the city, it's costing them $600,000 just to do so. That doesn't really make sense to switch over at all. You should keep it the way it is.
Whether you like it or not, the new parking meters are going to be installed in the next year. This is Amy Cleary for The Kicker.
2 women from the St. John's area recently got a chance to help school-aged kids in the African country of Uganda. They work with a group called HOPE, or Helping Orphans Prosper in Education. Marjorie Williams tells Kicker that education is the best gift of all.
People don't realize how easy it is to help somebody. All you got to do is make the step.
Yeah.
The step seems so big, but once you start making that step, it's just a whole bunch of little steps.
Kicker's Alex Kennedy will tell us more about the work that Hope does in Africa. That's ahead on Kicker Radio. Well, there hasn't been much snow in this part of the province lately, but when the snow flies, the plows will be out clearing the streets and in some cases cause property damage. Torn up lawns and broken curbs are all part of winter. As Kicker's Mike Moore tells us, the city of Mount Pearl has a plan for that.
Residents of the Avalon have been treated to a mild winter so far this year, but the melting snow has revealed bigger problems for some homeowners in Mount Pearl. On one street in particular, lawns have been ripped apart due to snow clearing and a lowered curb, and homeowners are wondering what they can do about it. According to Mayor Dave Aker, the city has a budget specifically for that.
The same thing occurs from time to time as we might also get a piece of curb and break it off and smash it up. We have a dedicated budget basically in the every spring and summer to fixing curbs, sidewalks, and doing minor road repairs.
The budget, according to Aker, is in the realm of $20,000 to $25,000, but homeowner Adam Hunt wonders if it's worth it.
As long as they come back and just do it, it's going to be quite annoying if every year you just have to call them to come back and then you're waiting on the city. You know how long it takes the city to do things. Well, it took them 2 months to put a bit of pavement down on my street. I understand that was out. That was obviously subcontracted, but as long as I'm not waiting till August for new sods, and that's pretty good. As long as they're pretty prompt when they replace them before the summer starts so they can take, that'd be fine with me.
Aker says it's cheaper to fix lawns rather than spending the money on concrete to replace the curbs each year.
The problem with that is, though, when you're trying to strike a balance, if you lower the curb, the operator doesn't have that extra little bit of feel from the curb, when the road stops and when the lawn begins, right? There's a balance to be struck, but that is the downside. There's no doubt about it, right?
Simply put, it's the nature of the beast that comes with winter in Newfoundland. For Kicker News, I'm Mike Moore.
History is being made in Korea. The two Koreas are coming together to compete in some sports at the Winter Olympics. As Melissa Wong tells us, at least one Newfoundlander has a front row seat for the historic moment.
대륙간 탄도 로켓 장착용 소소탄 시험에서 완전 성공.
Newfoundlanders are excited for the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea.
Well, and I'll be watching the Olympic Games in Pyeongchang.
I'm more excited to watch the women's Korean team in hockey than men's because it's just not going to be the same with the NHL.
One in particular is living in South Korea during the games.
It is pronounced Pyeongchang, and that's a county, a kind of rural area in Korea, about 130 kilometers from Seoul. About 3.5 weeks ago, things went topsy-turvy. The introduction of the North Korean invitees, all of a sudden. So they have been invited for a long time repeatedly to join in, and they refuse because, you know, that is the game with North Korea. It goes on like that, stubborn behavior. But suddenly the South Koreans were, encumbered with a big lot of work to prepare stadiums for them, residences for them. The people of Korea are divided. Some want them here and some don't. But all Koreans want peace. They all want peace here. But peace at any cost, that's not the answer for all South Koreans. It's angered some people. Yesterday there was a protest at a hockey game because many Koreans, and including myself, because there was a friendly game, the first one, I believe, for the unified hockey team. The female hockey team has incorporated North Koreans in their team, but they were not involved in the discussions. It was announced in the media, and that's how many of the hockey team found out. So it has enraged Koreans who believe, and are right to believe, that South Korea is a truly democratic country, and that kind of behavior is not democratic. To push South Korean hockey players out of their own team during their once-in-a-lifetime chance to participate in the Olympics, it has enraged people. The reunification of North Korea, it could cause a lot of social ill. The older people, the elderly, really want it, but they're not naive. It would be like unifying Newfoundland to the United States, two different cultures. So two different cultures to reunify, that's not an easy venture. So the North Koreans suddenly coming to South Korea for the Olympics, I think in general is welcome and doesn't affect people all over the country, like in Seoul, because it's too far from here. And they're watching on TV, and some are cheering it, and others are incrementally. But it happened in the last 3 weeks. It's too sudden.
Despite protests, North and South Korea will march together at the Olympic Games opening ceremony. For Kicker Radio, this is Melissa Wong. For Kicker Radio, this is Melissa Wong.
And that's the news. And now, back to Emily Lyver.
Thanks, Jason. A proposed organic compost site for Argentia Road by Metro Environmental Services has citizens of Whitburn worried about potential environmental hazards. Kicker's Arthur Craig Green reporting.
Mink farm waste and carcasses, dead birds, poultry feathers, and slaughterhouse offal from other forms of livestock will be the culprit. That's what will end up in a proposed compost site outside of Whitburn. It will be a reality if Metro Environmental Services gets the green light from government. The site will process organic waste to create organic fertilizer. This proposal has some residents kicking up a stink. Not in my backyard, local resident Harry Brazel says it is time for the surrounding communities to band together.
So it was decided at the meeting that we would go around and get various people from other communities involved as well, like Long Harbour, Dildo, any communities that were close to the vicinity where the compost site is going. So the second meeting that was carried, the third meeting now, which is Saturday, hopefully there's going to be people from the surrounding communities there. And then we're going to delegate scopes of work for each delegate to complete, such as the engineering aspect of it, environmental aspect of it, the business end of it, and put it all together to create a picture that'll give us all a path forward and be able to present it to Environment Department.
Harry worries about the potential environmental impact the site will have on the surrounding areas. He explains these fears.
The First Amendment or the Second Amendment they were given was to do an odor study. Now, odor is one very bad symptom of the compost site. But what we're worried about is anybody with bronchitis and various lung diseases that can be triggered by spores and the bacteria that'll travel in the air. As a OH&S, if you go to OH&S, the most drastic way of transfer is airborne, and the trickiest one. And yes, there'll be an odor, but the bacterial and spore aspect of anybody with lung disease will be detrimental. The other aspect would be leaching into the ground, and another thing would be the fact that the people around will be pestered with flies.
Bill Bishop of Whitburn says the site could also have a terrible effect on local salmon rivers in the area.
That the compost, Paul, I don't know if they're aware or not, but it's right between the waters of two salmon rivers. There's one that goes right down through the Rocky River one. That's the one on the east side of Argentia Road. And on the west side of Argentia Road, there's another one there that feeds down to Placentia Junction, and the waters goes down Trinity Bay. So, and I mean, what about all the drugs that those animals eat that's in those animal things, right? They're all what do you call it, medicated. So where are all them drugs going? In the water system, as far as I'm concerned, in the water table. And I don't agree with it. I don't think it should be there. I mean, I agree with the concept, but without land in Newfoundland, we don't need it in a community.
The residents hope to stop the potential stink this Saturday, when the next meeting is held in Whitburn at 7 p.m. For Kicker News, I'm Arthur Craig Green.
Next, we have kicker Stephen Miller reporting on shaga mushrooms, a new superfood said to have many medicinal uses that is gaining popularity across the country.
Earlier this week, I went into the woods looking for mushrooms. No, not those kind of mushrooms. Shaga mushrooms. Used as a folk remedy for centuries in Russia and northern European countries, shaga is said to treat everything from inflammation to cancer. Now that interest in shaga mushrooms has arrived in Newfoundland, local harvesters have been keen to meet the demand, and health stores have started selling shaga products both locally and nationally sourced. I met with a local harvester to learn more about shaga mushrooms and where they can be found.
I'm here with Mr. Dennis Mugford in a wooded area just outside St. John's on the Avalon Peninsula, and we are looking for shaga mushrooms.
Okay, so usually when we're harvesting shaga, we do it in the winter time when the tree is gone dormant, and it takes 20 days in a row of 5 degrees Celsius temperature or cooler for the actual shaga mushroom to go dormant on the tree, and makes it a safe time for you to harvest it responsibly. So when you're looking at a birch tree now, obviously the older, the bigger the birch, the more developed the shaga growth is going to be, and the bigger the shaga will be in turn.
Although the effectiveness of shaga in treating cancer has yet to be proven in North America, many scientific studies have found evidence of an abundance of antioxidants, which prevent a chemical reaction that can lead to damaged cells. Back in the woods, Mr. Mugford uses a birch tree to describe what we're looking for.
But in this case, a lot of the birch on the Avalon are smaller pieces. You will get off them because of the smaller tree, and in this case, we found a pretty big birch tree here, as you can hear, and you'd be looking for a kind of charcoal-looking black, tumor-like substance growing on the outside of the tree. So just as a closing point, I wanted to say that, on the west coast of Newfoundland with the bigger, older growth forests with those kind of bigger birch trees, it's more prevalent to find shaga out there, and in most cases that's where I go to get my mushrooms.
After coming up empty on our search for shaga, Mr. Mugford invited me back to his home to try a cup of shaga tea. I'm sitting in the home of local shaga mushroom enthusiast and harvester Dennis Mugford, and we are enjoying a cup of shaga tea.
Hello.
I will say that I have taken this on my own accord, and it has been without the consultation of any medical professional, but Mr. Mugford assures me that it is entirely safe.
Oh, well, just first off, what we basically did up here for a tea for us today for the interview was I did a boil on the grains left over from a tincture from the third batch there we did up this year, and out of those grains just bottled up the tea in some mason jars after it was strained, obviously. And you just can keep those refrigerated in your fridge in your kitchen. We just poured out a couple ounces into the bottom of a coffee mug and filled it with boiled water. And we're just enjoying some tea now. Pretty delicious, if you ask me.
Next, I headed to the local health store, Food for Thought, to speak with an employee and see what they had to say about the prized fungus. I'm here at Food for Thought with Lynn, and she's going to tell me a little bit about chaga mushrooms.
Okay, well, chaga grows on the birch, as I'm sure you know, but we carry a local product that's harvested in central Newfoundland, and there's science behind chaga, which a lot of these 7-day wonder type things there may not be. It's anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, antiviral, antioxidant, hepatoprotective, that's your liver.
Okay.
And promotes cardiovascular health.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me, Lynn. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Steve.
As chaga use continues to grow in Canada, one hopes that a more in-depth study of the medicinal value of the mushroom will emerge. In the meantime, we can either wait and see or take the claims at face value. One thing is for certain, should you hop on the chaga bandwagon, you'll have plenty of company. Stephen Miller, reporting for Kicker News.
All right, thank you, Stephen. You are listening to Kicker Radio, or maybe you're watching on Rogers. Either way, we're happy that you guys are here. You can check all of us out and all of our stories online at kicker.cna-nl.com. We're going to take a little break now and put a song on. Here is some CNA music students with Shotgun.
How y'all doing tonight? We're about to get down with some Motown up in this. From 1965. We're about to bring it to 2017. Y'all man, be hit me with them horns. I said, shotgun. Shoot 'em, boy, run now. Do the jerk, baby. Do the jerk now. Hey! Put on your red dress, and then you go downtown now. I said, buy yourself a shotgun now. We gonna break it down, baby, now. We gonna load it up, baby, now. And then you shoot 'em, boy, run. I said, shotgun. Shoot 'em, boy, run now. Do the jump, baby. Do the jump now. What have done with your horns? I said, shotgun. Shoot 'em, boy, run now. Do the jerk, baby. Do the jerk now. Put on your high heel shoes. Put on them shoes. I sit with. Go on down here, listen to a place of Motown. We gonna take a potato. We gonna pick tomato. I said, shotgun. Shoot 'em, boy, run now. Do the jerk, baby.
Welcome back to Kicker Radio. I'm your co-host, Emily Lyver. So, next up on our show, we've got The Rock's Rocky Economy has Newfoundlanders looking for work in exotic places, Alberta. Kicker's Rebecca Blake sits down with commuters to discuss the driving force behind the commute.
Newfoundlanders have worked abroad since the early days. From the migratory fishery to the moratorium in the 90s, workers from all over the province have trekked out, see the world, and make some money. The migratory workforce has been a hot topic in recent years, with unemployment at 15.4% of Newfoundland's population. It's the highest in all of Canada. This is troubling, especially for post-secondary graduates and the elderly. Catherine Simmons, a college student graduating in May, faces a dilemma. She can stay in Newfoundland, where she's lived her entire life, or move out west to find a job.
I did the research a couple months back. Me and my boyfriend were thinking about moving out together because, one, the unemployment rate in this province is very, very high. The only reason why I want to move out is just we need a job somewhere that's a livable paycheck per month, something to get us by and to actually have money left over. Yeah, it's going to be hard to leave, but I can't live here like living off $100 extra a month. It's not a good way to live.
Even for the elderly, finding job security can be troubling. Geraldine Wall, 68, has worked in Alberta, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland. She found working on the Rock to be a, well, rocky experience. Her biggest concern has always been security.
When you were working here, when you were working in Newfoundland, what was it like?
Very difficult. The pay was low. The work was hard. That's why most Newfoundlanders leave and go away.
Did you feel secure working here?
No.
Why was that?
Well, I think one of the big reasons being that anybody could come in and take your job. Your job was never secure. It depends on, could be a family member, could be a friend of theirs, could be for any reason. Very few unionized jobs, if at all, any.
Unions have become more accessible to people, but work itself isn't stabilizing. In the 2017 Economics Review commissioned by the Newfoundland government, real GDP growth is forecasted, but jobs will decline because of the shrinking need on major projects like Hebron and Muskrat Falls. Though the future seems gloomy, there is room for development. In the same Economics Review, there's growth expected in the oil and gas industry and the aquaculture industry. Newfoundland's economy is a rocky one, and it faces more challenges in the future. For Kicker News, I'm Rebecca Blake.
Kicker's Dylan Shepard talked to the high-flying Munn Seahawks to find out how athletes balance life and basketball. He spoke with two members of the men's team to get their take on how they do it.
The Munn Seahawks basketball team soaring from province to province representing Newfoundland in over 20 games a season, home and away. Where do these student athletes find the time to study and to unwind with friends? I talked with two team members, Patty Dahl and Costa Teodoriovic, both members of the Munn Seahawks basketball team, to find out what it takes to survive the school life while on the road. And how many games do you guys play a year?
We have 20 regular season games, plus about 6 preseason, and then maybe between 1 and 3 playoff games.
How many games of those are out of the province? How often are you guys on the road?
We have 10 regular season games on the road, and all of our preseason is on the road as well as playoffs.
And for both of you, how does that affect your studies?
Well, it depends on the timing. You know, if sometimes it's easier to bring projects and do them on the road, on the planes and stuff. But usually, it's better to do stuff ahead. So because it's hard to focus with all the practices and games going on during the road trip, so it's better to do them ahead when you have time.
Okay, and how does it affect your social life?
I mean, it's harder to spend time, like during the week, like with your friends and whatnot. I mean, obviously you have friends on the team that you get to see a lot, but in terms of people outside of the team, it's definitely more difficult to make time to see them. I mean, if we have practice, 4 or 5 times a week, depending on what point of the season we're in, and then traveling as well. So it's difficult to make time, yeah, for sure.
Is there breaks for exams?
Usually there are for finals. We have a week or 2 off. Just we're student athletes at the end. School comes first. But.
And what do you guys get out of the game? You get a sense of pride, or?
Personally, yes, I do feel pride in it. But I mean, also it's just like love of the game, right? I mean, I've been playing for like years, and I can't really imagine myself stopping just yet.
The love of the game and a sense of pride helps these players stay on track during their studies, and with good planning for projects and the willingness to put their social life on hold, all because ball is life. Dylan Shepard, Kicker News, St. John's.
All right, and we're going to take another quick break with a song, actually. And honestly, I'd say this is the best song name I've ever heard.
It's probably one of the best ones we've ever played on radio here.
I honestly think so. I think you're right. This is Pedro's Pancakes, and it's by a second-year student at the college, Mike Moist. So let's give that a listen. I'm so excited to hear it.
It looks like we're having some technical difficulties here.
All right, so I guess we'll just get going with the second half. So welcome back to everyone, where you're listening to Kicker Radio, or maybe you're watching us on Rogers Community Television. In the second half of our show, we've got a Shakespearean classic turned on its head, and that's a story by me.
We'll also visit a coffee shop that doubles as an art gallery out in Carbonear, plus a story about the repercussions landlords face when they're dealing with troublesome tenants.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, but first we're going to go to Jason Shepard with the news once again. Hey, Jason.
Thanks, Emily. 2 women from the St. John's area recently got a chance to help school-aged kids in the African country of Uganda. They work with a group called HOPE, or Helping Orphans Prosper in Education. Marjorie Williams tells Kicker that education is the best gift of all.
People don't realize how easy it is to help somebody. All you gotta do is make the step. Yeah. The step seems so big, but once you start making that step, it's just a whole bunch of little steps.
Kicker's Alex Kennedy will tell us more about the work that HOPE does in Africa coming up on Kicker Radio. Well, there hasn't been much snow in this part of the province lately, and not too many people are complaining about that, but when the snow does fly, the plows will be out clearing the streets, and in some cases will cause property damage. Torn up lawns and broken curbs are all part of winter. As Kicker's Mike Moore tells us, the city of Mount Pearl has a plan for that.
Residents of the Avalon have been treated to a mild winter so far this year, but the melting snow has revealed bigger problems for some homeowners in Mount Pearl. On one street in particular, lawns have been ripped apart due to snow clearing and a lowered curb, and homeowners are wondering what they can do about it. According to Mayor Dave Aker, the city has a budget specifically for that.
The same thing occurs from time to time, as we might also get a piece of curb and break it off and smash it up. We have a dedicated budget basically in the every spring and summer to fixing curbs, sidewalks, and doing minor road repairs.
The budget, according to Aker, is in the realm of $20,000 to $25,000, but homeowner Adam Hunt wonders if it's worth it.
As long as they come back and just do it. Like, it's going to be quite annoying if every year you just have to call them to come back and then you're waiting on the city. You know how long it takes the city to do things. Well, it took them 2 months to put a bit of pavement down on my street. I understand that was out. That was obviously subcontracted, but as long as I'm not waiting till August for new sods, and that's pretty good. As long as they're pretty prompt when they replace them before the summer starts so they can take, that'd be fine with me.
Aker says it's cheaper to fix lawns rather than spending the money on concrete to replace the curbs each year.
The problem with that is, though, when you're trying to strike a balance, if you lower the curb, the operator doesn't have that extra little bit of feel from the curb, when the road stops and when the lawn begins, right? There's a balance to be struck, but that is the downside. There's no doubt about it, right?
Simply put, it's the nature of the beast that comes with winter in Newfoundland. For Kicker News, I'm Mike Moore.
History is being made in Korea. The 2 Koreas are coming together to compete in some sports at the Winter Olympics. As Melissa Wong tells us, at least one Newfoundlander has a front row seat for the historic moment.
Newfoundlanders are excited for the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea.
Well, and I'll be watching the Olympic Games in Pyeongchang.
I'm more excited to watch the women's Korean team in hockey than men's because it's just not going to be the same without the NHL.
One in particular is living in South Korea during the games.
It is pronounced Pyeongchang, and that's a county, a kind of rural area in Korea, about 130 kilometers from Seoul. About 3.5 weeks ago, things went topsy-turvy. The introduction of the North Korean invitees, all of a sudden. So they have been invited for a long time repeatedly to join in, and they refuse because, you know, that is the game with North Korea. It goes on like that, stubborn behavior. But suddenly the South Koreans were, encumbered with a big lot of work to prepare stadiums for them, residences for them. The people of Korea are divided. Some want them here and some don't. But all Koreans want peace. They all want peace here. But peace at any cost, that's not the answer for all South Koreans. It angered some people. Yesterday there was a protest at a hockey game because many Koreans, and including myself, because there was a friendly game, the first one, I believe, for the unified hockey team. The female hockey team has incorporated North Koreans in their team, but they were not involved in the discussions. It was announced in the media, and that's how many of the hockey team found out. So it has enraged Koreans who believe, and are right to believe, that South Korea is a truly democratic country, and that kind of behavior is not democratic. To push South Korean hockey players out of their own team during their once-in-a-lifetime chance to participate in the Olympics, it has enraged people. The reunification of North Korea, it could cause a lot of social ill. The older people, the elderly, really want it, but they're not naive. It would be like unifying Newfoundland to the United States, two different cultures. So two different cultures to reunify, that's not an easy venture. So the North Koreans suddenly coming to South Korea for the Olympics, I think in general is welcome and doesn't affect people all over the country, like in Seoul, because it's too far from here. And they're watching on TV, and some are cheering it, and others are incrementally. But it happened in the last 3 weeks. It's too sudden.
Despite protests, North and South Korea will march together at the Olympic Games opening ceremony. For Kicker Radio, this is Melissa Wong.
And that's the news. And now we throw it back to Alex.
Thank you, Jason. And now, before we get into the bulk of our next half hour, it's time for another song. From their Motown show, here are some of CNA's incredibly talented music students with their take on Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On.
Let's get it on. I've been really trying, baby, to hold back this feeling for so long. And if you feel like I feel, baby, then come on. Oh, come on. Let's get it on. Oh, baby, let's get it on. Let's get it on. I tell, let's get it on. We're all sensitive people with so much to give. Since we've got to be here, let's live. I tell you, there's nothing wrong with me loving you. Understand me, sugar. And if you feel like I feel, it's 'cause the love is true. Oh, baby,
That was some of CNA's music students with Let's Get It On. You're listening to Kicker Radio. I'm Alex Kennedy.
And I'm Emily Lyver.
Or maybe you're watching us on Rogers TV. Either way, it's great to have you here. Well, here at the college, we're approaching midterms.
I'm so excited.
But, yeah, me too. But for children in Uganda, their school year is just beginning. And thanks to the work of 3 women from this province, more and more children are able to hit the books this school year. I spoke to 2 of the ladies behind Hope. That's a school bell. It's a sound that 25 children in Uganda will be hearing a lot more often, thanks to a group from this province. Marjorie Williams from Kilbride is one of the co-creators of Hope and traveled to Uganda in 2016.
HOPE stands for Helping Orphans Prosper in Education. But we went there 2 years in a row, but we went with another organization, but it's all the same children that we're dealing with now. When we were there, we recognized that, we had to do something. They were desperate. They were just living in a brick 2-roomed home with just metal beds with soiled sponge mattresses that they just put out to dry and put back in. And they barely had any clothes on them, ragged clothes, nothing on their feet, hardly any food, lack of education, everything. It was just awful.
Madeline Carew, another co-founder of Hope, spoke about her experience in Uganda and some of the people that she met.
It was eye-opening, first couple of days, but then you just get used to it. It's the way of life there. It's very poor. Everybody there is poor, not just the orphans. It's just like a village life. They're really giving. They'll give it away. Like the way the people are in Uganda, if you give them 3 pairs of shoes, they don't need 3 pairs of shoes. They will give the other 2 pair away. Yeah. They'll only keep what they need. That's the way. They're very giving people.
Hope is different than some of the other charities in St. John's. Rather than taking donations for care packages to send, they have put a focus on education. Hope provides funding to 25 orphans in the town of Jinja, Uganda. Their funding helps pay for books, school supplies, and the opportunity to attend boarding schools in the area. Williams believes that a proper education is the single best way to help a child grow.
Education, of course, was the best way to help these children, because you can't take an education away from somebody.
And thanks to their work, the orphans in Uganda reached a big milestone this week.
They all started school today, and we got 25 of the orphans are in boarding school now. That's the full orphanage. That's a big number. Yes.
In the boarding school, the kids have a bed to sleep in, 3 meals a day, fresh clothes, and medical attention if needed. Now, one of the most incredible things is that Hope is still young, only starting in late 2015. Williams says she has seen the snowball effect through the group's Facebook page, but isn't shocked to see the project taking off.
It's weird because from somebody looking out at what we do, you would almost think it's astonishing. Mm-hmm. But when I look at what we do, I think, wow, this is so easy. People don't realize how easy it is to help somebody. All you got to do is make the step. Yeah. The step seems so big, but once you start making that step, it's just a whole bunch of little steps. And you travel so far, and we've traveled so far over this year, and it was just easy. I don't think people realize how easy it is to help somebody.
Like Marjorie said, it's very easy to help those in need. Sponsoring a child costs about $700 per year, but a team of 5 or 6 would make that about $115 a person for an entire year. The group is also looking for knitted hats for newborns and old cell phones for members of the community. Williams and Carew plan to travel back to Uganda in March, and you can keep track of their journey on Facebook. For Kicker News, I'm Alex Kennedy.
Mick Davis's new album was recorded live off the floor with minimal overdubs, pressed to vinyl, written, produced, and released by himself. On Touch the Moon, Davis has reclaimed rock and roll tradition for himself.
Compromise can be a difficult thing for an artist.
But for Mick Davis these days, there is no need to compromise. There is no radio executive asking for remixes of his songs, only to never play them anyway. And no musical showcases at 7 in the morning with people in suits hungover from last night's excesses falling asleep while his band plays. No, thankfully, those are just memories now. And with no one left to impress but himself, his new album Touch the Moon with his band Thin Love ended up doing just that.
When we heard ourselves back, we just were astounded that the band was good. Like that we were, we'd all been around 20 years. We knew we were good, but we just didn't know how good it was. Yeah. So it's like, well, screw this. I'm not going to redo that guitar. I'm not going to add all this stuff. Let's just do the band, add the backing vocals, and tambourine and hand claps, and that be it,
Going from nowhere to heaven, knowing it's nowhere.
Thin Love is made up of Craig Follett on bass and Barry LeDrew on drums, both of whom sing backup. And with such seasoned players behind him, Davis felt he had little to worry about in the studio.
There were nights when I came in with songs the boys had never heard before. I didn't send them a demo. So I come in and say, we're doing a new one tonight. What is it? Well, you'll see when we get there, And they're that good that we'd learn it, and the thing would be done in 2 hours.
While the songs don't necessarily sound like they're from the 50s, the record itself does.
You mentioned the 50s and all that. I was like, if we're going to do it this way, where some of the tracks are just us in the room together, with the drums bleeding through the vocal mic and all that, so, well, let's put the thing in mono. Like, we don't have a lot to mix here. We don't have, we don't have Malcolm and Angus on the left and the right. We just got, the one guitar. So let's just put it all straight up.
By modern standards, a record in mono and released on vinyl may not be up to par, but that's just fine for Davis.
I just don't go for any of that modern manipulation of everything, and I like it. The band is good, and leave it alone, It's got to be somewhat rough. It's got to be somewhat raw. I mean, it's tight and loose, which is essentially saying rock and roll. That's what it is.
Rock and roll, indeed. For Kicker Radio, I'm Andrew Waterman.
Mick Davis and Thin Love will be releasing their album at the Jag Hotel on Saturday, February 17th. Now, from Touch the Moon, here's Nowhere to Heaven.
Going from nowhere to heaven, knowing it's nowhere. Blueprint, the plans that you made, even keys on the road that you paved. Hot floors and insulation, big window with the light shining through. Going from nowhere to heaven, knowing it's nowhere. Going from nowhere to heaven, knowing it's nowhere. With a longwood gray jay on the mast, your father and brothers standing in the past. Hard floors and insulation, window, the light shines through.
That was Mick Davis with Nowhere to Heaven. You're listening to Kicker Radio. Now, there are some who would argue that Shakespeare always intended for Hamlet to be played by a woman. But in Persistence Theater's newest play, some feel otherwise. My co-host, Kicker's Emily Lyver, has the story.
To be or not to be? That is the question for the heroine of Women Playing Hamlet, a theater show by William Missouri Downs that tells the story of Jessica, cast as the titular character in a New York production, and the inner and outer conflict she faces in accepting the role. The play is being put off by the Persistence Theater Company this week, a feminist group based in St. John's. I spoke with Jennifer Dion, the company's producing artistic director, about why they chose to present this play.
I like this play because it's a modern representation of a reasonably young person encountering challenges in the modern world. I think all of us are going to recognize a little bit of ourselves in what Jessica is struggling with.
Alex Reynolds will be directing, in her first professional gig since completing her Master of Fine Arts from the University of Victoria.
And so the show is really about overcoming self-doubt and trusting and believing in yourself and knowing that you've got this, knowing that you can do it, even when society and the people around you tell you that you can't. Because that's kind of the thing for Jessica, is she's consistently told that she's too young to play Hamlet, or she doesn't have it, or, you know, it's too much. So yeah, it's really about overcoming self-doubt, and especially as a woman, knowing that you can do it, knowing that you can walk into a field that's dominated by men, and you can be just as good or better than them.
Reynolds says that while Jessica does face struggles as a woman, that isn't the focus of her hardships.
And in the play, it's not so much that a woman is playing Hamlet, it's that she's too young. So it's more about her own self-doubt than it is about the fact that she's a woman. Which I think is really important, because we're beyond the fact that a role needs to be played by a man or a woman. I think it's so important that we as artists recognize that gender is not just binary, that it is so much more, and it exists on a spectrum. And so I think gender-neutral casting is really the way of the future, and I can't wait until more and more shows embrace that.
Both Reynolds and Dion acknowledged the irony of a play with heavy feminist themes still being written by a man, taking the perspective of a woman.
I'm excited for the day where a script like this is written by a woman. There are some instances in the script where we kind of like roll our eyes a little bit and we say like, oh, Bill, like, you don't know, like, come on, man. You know, and I think in my communications with him, because I've talked to him a little bit in producing the play, I think that I think he'd be okay with and champion our, you know, our slight modifications of, you know, some of his ideas, because he believes that each play should be unique. I think he's given us the freedom to make the script our own, and to take the patriarchy and to say, okay, like, this is his male view of what a woman is. How can we as women make that genuine and full and heartfelt and well-rounded?
Promoting women playwrights it's not We're not bound to do shows that are just written by women. However, it's something we're extremely cognizant of because of all the plays produced professionally, only about 25% of them now are written by female playwrights, even though they represent over 50% of the playwriting unions in Canada and the US. So we are moving to, whenever possible, we're trying to select scripts that are written by women.
Women Playing Hamlet will be performed nightly at 7:30 at the Barbara Barrett Theatre in St. John's until Saturday. You can purchase tickets at the Arts and Culture box office or online at persistencetheatre.com. For Kicker News, I'm Emily Lyver. It sounds like a Hollywood thriller at first. Homeowner decides to rent to who they believe will be a fine tenant. Unfortunately, this doesn't always turn out to be the case. Many landlords have had to deal with destructive and unruly tenants. The question then is, who might be responsible? Kicker's Jason Shepard spoke to 2 local landlords with incredible stories to tell.
Affordable housing is a major issue here in St. John's as the cost of rent has doubled over the last decade. Landlords who could afford to be more picky over who they choose to rent to now have had to be less discerning over who they let live in their properties. Kenneth J. Power is the local business owner who also owns about 10 rental properties around St. John's. He says that the majority of people he rents to are decent tenants, but he's had encounters with some bad ones.
My first experience, turns out she calls up looking for an apartment. She tells me she's got a couple of kids, and she sounds like a really nice, intelligent lady. She's got 2 university degrees. So she moves in, everything is great, until we start to realize that she's a hoarder. So she collected everything, you name it, tabletops with no legs, cardboard boxes. Never cleaned the place the whole time she was in there. Never had a phone, just come up torturing us to use the phone. So finally I had enough of her. It came to the point where she began to harass my wife and my neighbors and stuff. So we evicted her. So we went downstairs to clean the apartment. Dude, we had to wear, my wife's a nurse, we had to wear hospital masks and gloves. We had to throw the fridge out. It was beyond repair. She left her van behind. So I pushed it out in the middle of the street, and I called the cops and I told them there was a van in the middle of the street. So they came and got it. So anyway, she left owing me $1,000 between rent, the damage she had done, heat and light bills, etc. Right?
Due to the extreme damage left over when a destructive tenant moves out, Ken says that unfortunately renting to others has gotten more difficult. Timothy LeGros has been a property manager for 10 years and has had his share of issues as well, including a months-long ongoing one.
I had a tenant, a young girl. She'd been living in the apartment with somebody else, and then that person had moved out, but she was the primary leaseholder. Basically what happened was that she's on a fixed income, and the person who moved out, then, they'd taking their rent. She couldn't afford to stay there. Anyway, this went on for about 2 months until the decision was made that she couldn't, we couldn't go on like this unless she found a roommate, and she wasn't looking very hard, so we decided that she was going to move out. All well and good. She was in agreement. And on the day that she was supposed to move out of the apartment, she had gotten advice from a local community group that if she had filed a claim against me for invalid notice, that they could stay the eviction until a hearing. And in doing so, they asked her when she would like a hearing date, and she chose the date of February 28th, about 7 weeks from when she was supposed, or 6 weeks from when she was supposed to move out. And I did everything right. Landlords have no recourse. The rules in our province are dictated solely towards the tenant. But I mean, you know what I mean? It usually comes out that the landlord loses money here.
As for recourse a landlord has when situations like this arise, Ken admits there is little to fall back on.
You basically have none. I mean, it's the same as the criminal courts here. All you gotta do is say you didn't do it, and you're golden, right? Yeah, they come up with the craziest excuse for not paying rent, and they'll slander you afterwards. Like my name ended up on a slumlords Facebook group, right? Because of so they retaliate in that way. Unless you're a really good-natured guy, I would not recommend getting too heavily into the rental properties for that reason alone.
Despite a number of attempts to contact them, a spokesperson for the Residential Tenancies Act did not get back to me before this story went to air. For Kicker Radio, this is Jason Shepard.
And that's our show, actually. We'd like to thank you all for listening and or watching.
You can check out all of our stories for this week at our website, kicker.cna.nl.com. I'm Alex Kennedy.
I'm Emily Lyver. Thank you, everyone, for listening.